Today is day 2 of cooking one eggplant dish a day for 7 days until I master this vegetable. The dish for today was inspired by tortas de milanesa. Tortas is a meal that I ate a lot growing up, especially when my mom got sick. It was something that was easy to make and very inexpensive. But milanesa tortas were very rare in our household because it was just way more expensive to make. But first, I sliced up the leeks and popped them into the air fryer with some olive oil and cracked salt. Leeks are actually one of the vegetables that I grew for the first time this year, and the reason I even attempted to grow them was because I've seen other gardeners harvesting them in their videos and cooking with them. And that's one of the ways that I discover new veggies that I've never tried before, because growing up we never ate leeks. I don't even remember seeing them at the grocery store. I mean, I'm pretty sure they were there, but because we never bought them, I just never really thought about them. And I've got to say that they're really, really delicious. I personally like to treat them the same way I would cebollitas, which are like spring or green onions. And while that was cooking, I started slicing up the rest of the toppings for the torta, which was going to be some peach tomatoes and lettuce. I chose to go with the white Casper eggplant for this dish because it's supposed to have more of a mushroom-like flavor, which I thought would be perfect to replace chicken or steak in a regular milanesa because it would taste more umami. And I sliced it thinly so it could cook all the way through without burning the breading on the outside. Next, I made a wet batter that had all-purpose flour, and it was seasoned with garlic powder, onion powder, black pepper, salt, smoked paprika, and MSG. Those are my favorite ingredients to use in just about every single meal. I also added in water until I got a nice batter that wasn't too thick or too thin. Then I took all of the same ingredients and added them to a different bowl, but I just excluded the water. That way I would have a wet batter and a dry dredge. And I didn't use measurements for any of these ingredients. And really, anytime you see me in the kitchen, unless I'm baking, I'm not following a specific recipe. I just watch a ton of videos of people cooking, and then I wing it in my own kitchen with the ingredients that I already have. And I've done this ever since I was a child because growing up we didn't have a lot of money. So every 2 weeks my parents would get their paycheck, and whatever she bought at the grocery store had to be stretched out to last us 2 weeks because there was no more paychecks coming in and we didn't have credit cards or anything back then. So I had to learn how to cook without following recipes because maybe we didn't have an ingredient, or maybe we just didn't have enough of one ingredient. And then I took a little bit of the wet batter and added it into my dry dredge to create clumps. And I want those clumps in there because those are going to add a nice texture to the eggplant milanesa. Then I dipped an eggplant slice in the dry flour, then into the wet batter, and then back into the dry clumpy flour. And I did this for every slice of the eggplant. I really wanted to make sure I had clumps on every single slice because those clumps will eventually fry, and because they're seasoned really well, they're gonna taste absolutely delicious. I feel like the wok is one of my favorite things to cook in because it has those really deep sides, which allows me to cook a lot of food at once without making too much of a mess. And especially when it comes to frying, I feel way safer using the wok than using any other pot. But while that was heating up, I had to multitask and start on the beans. Ever since I was a kid, my mom would add beans to any type of torta she made, and it immediately made it a lot more filling and a lot more flavorful. So to do this, I fried a few slices of onion in oil until they started to burn a little bit. I know that sounds weird, but growing up, my mom always told me to let a little bit of the onion burn, not garlic, but onion. Let it burn a little bit to flavor the oil, and trust me, it definitely makes a difference in flavor. So I let it get a little bit extra color, and then I also added in a pepper for a really nice kick. Fried peppers just taste so amazing, and having them in refried beans is chef's kiss. Then once the onions started getting a little bit more dark, I added in my canned beans. Growing up, my mom never really bought canned beans. It was always fresh beans slowly cooked in an olla, but that takes forever. So we still cook beans every single week for different meals, but I don't have beans on hand every single day. So when that happens, I just buy canned whole beans. So I added in the beans and started mashing them until they got really nice and creamy. And then I let them simmer on the stove until they thickened up a little bit more, but I had to keep an eye on them because if I leave them unattended, they will burn very quickly. And by this time, the oil was definitely hot enough, so I started frying my breaded eggplant in small batches, and the whole house smelled amazing. So once I felt like they were crispy enough and I had a good idea that the eggplant inside was cooked through, I let them drain a little bit and then set them on top of paper towels off to the side. While those cooled down, I sliced up my bolillos, buttered them on the inside, and then toasted them on top of the comal. And this is my favorite way to prep bolillos for tortas, especially if I bought them maybe like 2 or 3 days ahead of time, because it just brings them back to life. Then I spread some veggies and added in some chow cheese, refried beans, and my breaded eggplants, and topped each one with some peach tomatoes, iceberg lettuce, and slices of avocado. And there it is, I was finally done.
Can still do it.
I would give this dish a 10 out of 10 because the eggplant was still the star of the show and it paired perfectly with all of the other ingredients like the peach tomatoes, the leeks on the side, the refried beans, and everybody in my family loved it. Some of my kids even asked for seconds, but I hope I can keep up this momentum for the rest of the week.